The late afternoon sun hung low over the wide Texas plains, burning the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The prairie stretched endlessly, broken only by patches of dry grass swaying in the warm breeze. It was a land both beautiful and unforgiving, a land where the strong endured, and the weak often perished unseen. Jack Morgan knew this better than anyone. He had been a cowboy all his life, a man forged by the dust, the cattle trails, and the silence of lonely nights. His wife had died years back, and his grown son had long since moved to the city, chasing a life Jack never understood. The ranch Jack tended was no more than a few dozen cattle, a battered old barn, and a small wooden house that echoed with emptiness. Every evening when he came back from the fields, there was no voice waiting for him, no laughter, no warmth, just the creak of old wood and the hum of cicadas outside. On this particular evening, Jack was riding home, his hat tipped low against the setting sun. His horse, Dusty, moved at a slow steady gait. Jack's mind wandered to the chores that still waited for him, mending a fence, checking the feed, and maybe cooking some beans, before falling asleep alone, as he always did. But then, faintly at first, he heard something unusual. It was not the cry of an animal, not the howl of coyotes or the bleating of a stray calf. It was sharper, more fragile. A cry of desperation. Jack pulled on Dusty's reins and froze. He listened again. There it was, the unmistakable sound of a baby's cry, carried by the wind. His heart lurched. He dismounted quickly, his boots crunching over the dry grass as he followed the sound. Beneath the twisted shadow of a mesquite tree, he saw them. A young woman, no older than her 20s, lay on the ground, her face pale, her body weak, as if the life had been drained from her. Beside her, on a bed of brittle grass, was a baby wrapped in nothing but a thin, torn cloth. The child's tiny fists flailed as it cried, its cheeks streaked with dirt and hunger. Jack felt his chest tighten. He had seen hardship before, but never this. The young woman tried to lift her head as he approached. Her lips trembled, whispering words too faint to understand. Then her eyes rolled shut, and she collapsed again. Jack didn't think twice. He shrugged off his long, worn coat and gently wrapped it around the baby, cradling the tiny body against his chest. Then he bent down and carefully lifted the young woman into his arms. "You're safe now," he whispered, though she was too weak to hear him. With difficulty, he managed to get both mother and child onto Dusty's back. Leading the horse by the reins, Jack walked the long mile back to his ranch, every step heavy but steady. The baby's cries pierced the quiet evening, but Jack hummed an old tune his wife once sang, a melody he hadn't dared remember in years. Slowly, the cries softened, though the baby still clung to life in fragile breaths. When he reached the ranch, Jack carried them inside. He laid the woman on his bed and quickly warmed milk he kept for calves, pouring it carefully into a clean tin cup. With trembling hands, he fed the baby drop by drop until its tiny lips latched, sucking greedily. Relief washed over him as the cries turned into soft, contented breaths. He turned to the woman, brushing a strand of hair from her dirt-streaked face. She stirred weakly, her eyes fluttering open. For a moment, fear crossed her face, but Jack spoke gently. "You and the baby are safe here. Rest. I'll take care of you." She blinked, tears slipping down her cheeks, and with what little strength she had, she whispered, "Thank you," before drifting back into sleep. Over the days that followed, Jack nursed them back to health. He learned her name was Anna. She had been running for days, fleeing through a life in a distant town. With no family and nowhere to go, she had carried her child across the plains, hoping for a miracle, until hunger and exhaustion brought her to the ground. Jack became that miracle. He cooked meals, fetched water, and stayed up at night when the baby cried. His old ranch, once filled with silence, now echoed with soft coos, with gentle lullabies, and with the sound of life returning. At first, the townsfolk whispered, when they heard that the old cowboy had taken in a strange woman and her child. But as weeks turned into months, their whispers turned to quiet admiration. People saw how Jack, once a lonely figure in the fields, walked into town with a baby on his hip, a faint smile under his weathered mustache. They saw Anna by his side, stronger now, her eyes filled with gratitude. The baby, little Grace, grew healthy and happy. She reached for Jack whenever he entered the room, her tiny hands grasping his rough fingers, as if she already knew the cowboy had saved a life. One evening, months later, Jack sat on the porch with Grace in his lap. The sun dipped behind the horizon, painting the sky in purple and gold. Anna came out quietly, watching them. Tears shimmered in her eyes, not of sorrow, but of something deeper. "Jack," she said softly, her voice breaking, "you didn't just save us. You gave us a home. You gave me a reason to believe again." Jack looked at her, his eyes glistening in the fading light. He had spent years believing his best days were behind him, that life had nothing more to offer than silence and routine. But here, with Grace laughing in his arms and Anna smiling through her tears, he realized that sometimes life gives second chances in the most unexpected ways. He tipped his hat, his voice low and steady. No one deserves to be left out there alone. Not you. Not her. Not anyone. And so, the cowboy who once lived in emptiness found his home filled with warmth again, not by blood, but by kindness. The ranch that had echoed with silence now rang with laughter and hope. Every time Jack thought back to that cry in the grass, he understood. Sometimes the smallest voices carry the greatest purpose. And as the camera of life panned out over the endless plains, their story stood as proof that kindness can save lives, and sometimes,